Today on Bridges, my guest will share how even though he came from a stable and a good home, that didn't stop him from falling away from the Lord. Today he'll share his story of falling down and finding God. I'm so glad that you could join us today for Bridges. I'm Monica Schmelter, and I can't wait for you to meet my guests who will share their story really of falling down, falling away from the Lord, and then finding God. And my prayer for all of us is that it will help us find the hope that's only available in Jesus Christ. And so, Kaci and Jeremy, I want to welcome you both.
Well, thank
you so much.
So glad to meet both of you. Jeremy, you've really penned your story in a book called Falling Down. Tell us a little bit about your personal story, and Kaci, we want to hear, of course, from you as well.
Well, as you had pointed out, I was raised in a Christian home, in a Christian community in a small town in northwest Missouri, really almost like a Mayberry type of upbringing.
Oh, that sounds so nice. Like, I've always liked that, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
it was amazing. And yet somewhere along the way, being raised, as I would say, an inch from the truth, I missed it. And I went into a lifestyle of drugs and alcohol and all of the emotional fallout that comes with that kind of lifestyle, and the sick cycle of sin that just, it's almost like a wheel spinning in the mud.
Yep.
And it just keeps pulling you down, and you get more stuck and more stuck. And so it wasn't until we hit rock bottom. Kaci and I, our marriage was falling apart.
So you got married to Kaci in that kind of a lifestyle?
Yes. Yes. And we had 2 of our children in that as well. Oh. And so things were just falling apart. And it was at that point that we just finally turned to the Lord and said, we need you.
Yeah. Yeah. And thankfully, He's so merciful. Kaci, from your perspective, you know, when you met Jeremy, were you thinking at all that you would be living a Christian life, or were you just entrenched with kind of that downward spiral yourself?
You know, I think I thought eventually I would probably get back to the Lord, but at that point.
Were you raised in a Christian home?
I was. I was raised in a Christian home, and raised in a small little Bible church in my small town that I grew up in, and but I had just basically walked away from all of that when Jeremy and I met and we got married. But you know, when I got pregnant before we got married, and I knew at that point that my lifestyle, although I wasn't back to the Lord completely, I grew up really fast, and I decided that my lifestyle and how I was living was going to have to change. Yeah. So I think I knew deep down that I would eventually get back to the Lord.
Yeah. And that's a wonderful thing. I think sometimes becoming pregnant and having a baby gives us kind of that, you know, this life is more than just about me. Like, we know that this little one's going to be depending on us. And so you had those thoughts, and you had that foundation.
I did, yeah.
You know, and yet, you know, Jeremy, as you talk about, and I love the description of the wheel being stuck in the mud, the cycle of sin, because that's what I've heard over and over on this program and in my personal relationships of someone that gets stuck in the cycle of addiction. It's not that the person doesn't care or that they don't want to change. It's that it's so deeply entrenched in who they are. And then it's like the odds sort of get stacked against them to walk away.
Yes.
Was it like that for you at all?
Oh, you know, I have a degree in computer science, so pardon the example I'll give here, but I just knew that if I plug in X, I'm going to get Y. And I may not like Y, but I know that I'm going to get Y every time. But if I plug in something else, another variable, I don't know what I'm going to get. And it's that kind of that fear of not knowing what you're going to get that almost keeps you arrested in development.
Ah.
And so then that wheel just keeps spinning.
Yeah. Are you saying, just so that I can understand, that you had the fear of, like, as bad as this is, I know what it is?
Mm-hmm.
But if I try to get out, like, I don't know what that would look like, or maybe I don't know if I could do it, so you just stay there.
Yeah, yeah. As a matter of fact, I see that in the church so much with other brothers that I mentor, or maybe are just walking through things in my life with. Is and I actually pinned it in the bridge of one of my songs. I don't want to stay, but I don't want to change, because change is so hard.
It's hard.
It is. And so many times I look at my life and I know I want to change, but I don't know how to. I don't know what that will look like. I don't know what will happen when I start. And sometimes I just don't know where to start. And so you're saying in your life you felt that way, and in the men that you mentor now, you see this.
Yes, over and over. Yeah. And then, to quote another line in a song that Kaci and I wrote together, I wish I could run away, but I'll stay. All of us, I think, have this deep desire to be better than what we are.
Absolutely.
To not be stuck in this, and we wish that we could run away, but this is so comfortable, and there's so much fear. I love music, obviously, but the songs "No Longer Slaves" and "Fear." Is it Zach Williams? Yes.
Mm-hmm. Fear is a liar.
Fear is a liar.
Fear is a liar. The truth in those songs, fear is a liar.
Yeah.
But it's something that will shackle us and hold us so tight.
Fear is a liar, but it's a powerful liar.
Yes.
And I've believed those lies. I one day just took like a notepad and just checked off every time fear came to me in a day, like that thought of, what will I do? What will I do? And I couldn't believe how many tally marks I had.
Wow.
How many tally marks of, like, how entrenched in fear that I can be, even knowing Christ.
Right.
And because that's our responsibility, to stop those thoughts in their tracks by faith. But sometimes we don't. We just let that go. So I know that you all are here today as a couple serving the Lord, as singers, songwriters, and all of that. But tell me about that turning point for you where you were able to get out of that lifestyle.
The interesting thing is, God used ministry to help me get out of that lifestyle. So when we came into a relationship with Jesus Christ the summer of 2000, I was still a high functioning addict, and so the theme of falling down continues to spin even in my walk. And then in 2001, the Lord calls me into music ministry. So I began serving on worship teams and stuff like that. And then after 5 years of marriage, I find out that my wife can sing. And so we start singing together and serving together, but I'm still struggling with addictions, not as much, but because I'm high functioning, nobody knows that I'm struggling through this. And again, fear arrests you, so you suppress this, and you just keep on, and you just keep trudging through. It really wasn't until about 2003, 2004 that I finally broke the chains, broke the cycles through the help of Jesus Christ, and was able to walk freely. But then that's kind of when the real battle begins in the walk with Christ, right?
Exactly.
Because now we're dealing with emotional and all those deep pains that came from that lifestyle, and the hurts that we brought into our marriage together.
Yeah, because it's a lot. I think, Jeremy and Kaci, sometimes we tell the story like this, where we come to Christ, we ask forgiveness, we say amen, and then everything is new. And we are immediately made a new creature that moment that we ask for forgiveness. But yet the process of deliverance and working out our own salvation with fear and trembling is just that. It is a process. For most of us, we are not instantly delivered from every hurt, from every pain, from every habit, right?
Right.
It's that process of becoming a disciple. And so, Jeremy, I think that you and Kaci, your story is so powerful, and you pin it in this book, Falling Down, and it's my life as seen through the eyes of the prodigal son. And of course, being a prodigal at one point in your life. But when I hear you say that you're a high-functioning addict, tell me what that means.
What that means is I could be high or drunk or at least a little buzzed, and I could go through, I was a network engineer for a telecommunications company in Kansas, and I could function in that capacity. I mean, I can't remember, this is in the late 90s, early 2000s, and you're talking about just the state of Kansas that they covered. And we're thinking that, you know, every minute that we were down as an IT department, you're costing $25,000 to $30,000 every minute. And I'm in this pressure situation, and I'm functioning even while I'm high, and it's all to numb the pain.
You know, when I hear you say that, I think there are just so many others in that same situation. We've got to take a break. When we come back, we'll hear more of Jeremy and Kaci's story, but right now, I'll look at their video, Falling Down.
I'm falling down. Don't know which way is up. I wallow in my sin as pride raises up. Can't keep me down from this pedestal I'm on. Walking my own way while still claiming God's. I can see you. I can see your beautiful face, and I long to feel your loving embrace. How beautiful it is to fall down. Falling down. Been here before. Had to get my fix, just like before. Can't keep me out of this world I'm living in. Walking my own straight, convinced that it's his. I can see you.
Don't miss another episode of Bridges. Subscribe to our YouTube channel today, where you can find all of Monica's latest teachings and interviews. It's easy to do. Just visit youtube.com, search Monica Schmelter, and click subscribe. Once you are subscribed, click the bell icon to get notified when a new episode is available to view. Thanks for watching Bridges.
Join the Bridges community on Facebook. Visit Facebook and search for Bridges with Monica. We would love to connect with you.
For more information on a guest, visit our website, ctntv.org.
If you are just joining us on Bridges, that was a video, Falling Down, by Jeremy and Kaci Neely, and they're sharing with us today their hope story of how, even though they were prodigals and got caught and trapped in addictions, they've come to Christ now and are now sharing that story with others. So I want to thank you guys for doing that. And Jeremy, before the break, you were sharing at one point you were a high-functioning addict. You could do your IT network engineer job. You could pull it off.
Yeah.
But you knew, and it still has to be a toll in your heart on what you know is wrong.
Oh yeah, especially because at that point I was, after the summer of 2000, I was a believer in Jesus Christ, and I was kind of vocal in my faith, but yet I'm carrying this burden and this sin, and it's eating me.
Yeah. And I think it's important that we talk about that, because there are many believers in Christ who are sincere about their belief in Christ, and yet may be trapped in a struggle or in a bondage. And they work to hide it, not so much to be a hypocrite, because people don't know what to do. We don't know how to get free. And that pain is just so horrible. Is that kind of how it felt for you, Kaci?
Yeah.
Being in the situation?
Definitely. And I would more say, because a lot of time during that time of Jeremy's addictions, I really didn't know some of that was going on. But as far as when I was in my lifestyle of sin, I tried to hide all of that, especially from like my family and my church family back where I grew up. Because I didn't want any of those people to know where I was at and how I was living. And so I definitely tried to hide that, and I didn't want anybody to know about it.
Right.
So it was hard to get out of that, because I did feel stuck in that lifestyle for sure.
And now you guys are here today, and you've written this book, Jeremy, Falling Down. My life is seen through the eyes of a prodigal son, and you all call yourself musicianaries, and your marriage and your family are healed, and you're going forward. Tell me about that part of the transformation, because I'd really like us to give hope to people that are watching today that maybe are living a life of duplicity, and they desperately want out.
Well, it's a journey. It's definitely a journey.
Yeah.
Healing for us did not take place overnight, as you had kind of hinted towards in the first segment, that sometimes we give off this false persona, if you will, that I've come into a relationship with Christ, and now I'm skipping through green fields with flowers in my hair. And that's just not the case. The case is that now the battle has begun. And so for years, we really struggled with forgiveness and anger.
Like forgiving each other?
Forgiving each other, forgiving ourselves, because we did, sexual sin. That takes a very deep toll on yourself, and as well as your spouse. And so there was a lot of anger and hurt and forgiveness that had to be dealt with. And even to this day, we're still working through some of the fallouts of that, because even though there's healing, it's a very deep wound, and with very deep wounds comes scar tissue. And sometimes that scar tissue just doesn't feel very nice. And so so we just fall back on Christ and let Him ease the pains and work through and keep moving forward.
Yes, yes. Is that what it's been like for you?
Yeah, definitely a journey, like
Yeah.
when you were talking about, and a process. As far as our salvation goes, it's the same for us as far as our healing goes. Like our marriage and the healing of our own hurts and pains, just personally, I feel it's the same. It's a process, it's a journey. Even after 19 years of being in a relationship with Christ, He still brings up things
Yes.
all the time that He wants to deal with to keep us going and looking more like Him. So we're still in that process.
And here's the thing, we all will be in
Yes.
that process this side of
Definitely.
heaven.
Definitely.
You know, sometimes I'll look at my life and I think, well, I think that after all these years of serving Christ that I would have been farther along.
Yeah, yeah,
But I'm not.
yeah.
Like, there are still things coming to the surface. And if I'll surrender them to Him, His grace and mercy are available to me, but it's still hurtful. I went to a Christian counselor once who told me this, and it's just stuck with me forever. She said, you need to learn to be okay with everything not being okay.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And I thought, well, I wonder like if that's really a renewed comment, like if that's a renewed thought.
Right.
But as I prayed about it and as I thought about it, I understood in a deeper way what she was conveying. This side of heaven will always, we have the weight of sin. It says when we go to heaven, that weight of sin will be lifted from us. But we have that, and it will pop up and it will creep up. And that doesn't mean that we're not good Christians or that we don't love
Right.
Jesus. We just have to surrender more fully. It's a growing process. So tell me about being a musicianary. What does that mean?
Oh, I think it can mean a lot of things, but for us, I feel like we're missionaries just because we go all over now the world. The past 4 years, we've traveled internationally. So we go all over the world and we share, Jesus, of course, but just what God's done in our life through our music and testimony. And Jeremy's an amazing storyteller. And so we've just called ourselves musicianaries because we do feel like we are missionaries. And we just do it through music mainly.
And you share your story, not just of the pain and the disaster, but the healing.
Yeah.
So that people can be hopeful. And I do want to ask you, Kaci, because you had mentioned, that after you guys had come back to Christ, so to speak, Jeremy kind of had some hidden addictions, some things that you didn't know about, maybe that he was still using drugs. And you know that now. Was it hard for you to rebuild trust?
Yeah, I think that definitely, not only with the addictions, but then also the sexual sin, there's always that issue of trust both ways, since we both had a sexual past. And that is just an issue that it's very painful. So the trust issue is definitely there, and it's something that has to just be worked on.
Right.
As you're going through that healing process.
Yeah.
But I believe that there is hope, and
Yes.
That's something we always share when we share our story, is that there is hope because we have come from this, and we are here now, not saying we definitely don't have it all figured out. We definitely are not, we are still
Yes.
working it out. But there is hope, you don't have to stay where you are. You don't have to stay in that addiction, that lifestyle. And I think that's amazing
Yes, it is.
that we have that.
The light of Christ is always lighter than our darkest day.
Yes.
And even in that fear of change, sometimes I have to walk myself through, okay, as ugly and as uncomfortable as this might feel for me, my worst day with Christ is better than my best day without Him. And that helps kind of lead me forward. And sometimes I think we're looking for this perfection of a marriage in which, there's never a lack of trust or a suspicion, but that's probably unrealistic this side of heaven. It's so much better to lean into each other and just be vulnerable and say, I need you in my life. I need to be able to trust you. But only Jesus is perfect.
Right.
Yes.
definitely.
Yes.
So I know, Jeremy, that you guys are traveling the world, and yet God put it on your heart to write this book. Tell me about that journey.
Well, the interesting thing is that for probably about 10 years, God has been on me to write the book. And part of my makeup, I don't know where I picked this up, but that's a big project.
Yeah.
And to do that seemingly by yourself, it's a big elephant. And I just could not fathom how I was going to eat that elephant. And then in 2017, as we were over in England serving with a festival called Creation Fest and some other churches around England and Europe, my intestine burst. And I nearly died in England.
Oh my goodness.
And so that put me on my back. And while I was on my back, God gave me a vision for how to eat the elephant. And it was using my gift as a storyteller and breaking up my life into little bits of story and just tackling it one bit at a time or one bite at a time.
Yeah. That is so awesome. And so now it is a book, Falling Down. It's your life story seen through the eyes of a prodigal son. We've got just a few seconds left. Is there one last thought you'd like to leave?
I would just like to encourage people that the process of falling down doesn't always have to be negative. I am in a constant state of falling down now in a positive way, meaning I'm surrendering myself constantly to Jesus Christ.
Amen.
So I would just encourage people, even with your deepest, darkest secret sin, just fall before Him.
Amen.
And lean on Him, and He will accept you. Even if people will reject you, He will accept you. But don't live in that anymore.
Amen. Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, Kaci.
Thank you.
For coming today and sharing your story. We are all out of time, but we thank you so much for joining us today on Bridges. We say goodbye and God bless you.
Prayer changes things. If you need prayer, call 615-754-0039 or email prayer@ctntv.org.
Log on to www.ctntv.org, where you can make a prayer request, view our program guide, see who's on Bridges, or even watch one of Monica's latest teachings. Log on to www.ctntv.org.